it's been dubbed the miracle on grass as the Lions came back from 31 points down at the start of the fourth quarter and 44 points overall to beat the GWS Giants to take it to the prelim. They just ran over the top of them in the end, and it's mental for GWS to have given up 2 substantial leads in back-to-back games, and now they're out the finals in straight sets. It's mental to think that over the course of the 2 games, the Giants undoubtedly were the best side in those games, but they couldn't make it count when they were on top. They just struggled. It felt like they were missing crucial behinds, especially early in the Lions game. You could just see it was somewhat even, but the Lions were missing a hitting the post, which has become a norm for them. But when it was going up the other end, it just felt like the same was happening. I mean, Jesse Hogan kicked 2 out in the full and a behind on relatively easy set shots that just you would expect him to kick. I mean, he's been the best forward in the comp this year, but he just struggled. I mean, he finished with 5 and did have a good game overall, but it was those crucial moments early on that you're watching me going, the Giants couldn't capitalize on these, and that is where the struggles fell, and they still got out to that 44 point lead, but just once they get a run kicked on them, they just don't seem to be able to stop it at all. I mean, Sydney did it, the Lions have done it, they just struggle to have that switch to turn it around, and they're known for that tsunami wave, but when it had, especially in the last quarter, when Brisbane was slowly crawling it back, it felt like GWS were very slow to actually actually put a man behind the ball. And even with the man behind the ball, it's not as if you're solely defending. With the way they play that tsunami, that wave running forward, you've just got an extra man who's running through doing that. And so it can still help. It just gives you the extra protection if something turns around, if the Lions go on the run that they did. It just felt like they couldn't stop that. They just didn't have any answers. And so that's something they really are going to have to take a look at, because that's twice that they've essentially been cost prelim final twice. In the first game would have gotten through with the bye, and then in this game would have got them there in the end. Instead, they've gone out in straight sets and just will have to take a real hard look at themselves, because they were who I was going for them on my bandwagon team for the finals. I was really hoping they would get over the line and get it done, but they felt like they were in the best form. They were really good all year. They had their wobbles a bit, but came good late, and you just felt like they had the momentum and could really put up a fight. And when they took it to Sydney, you were like, okay, well, it kind of felt inevitable that the Giants would wrap back around, win through, and get to the final. It's probably an all-Sydney grand final, but they let it slip once again. Joey Danaher comes up clutch for the Lions and gets them over the line, and it was great if you're a Lions fan and could see that exciting time. They seem to have quite a good travelling support. You could definitely hear them on the broadcast, which was surprising as someone who's lived in Brisbane. When I think of Brisbane fans, I still think of basically a decade ago when they weren't that good and it was all NRL up here. Just nothing. It felt like no one knew anything about AFL, and here in general, it feels like it's still very NRL dominated. It's still feels rare to find a big Lions fan, but you get it occasionally. So to see that travelling support is good for them, to see that it's growing. But now they've got the big test of the Cats, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, the Cats have all the experience in the world, and I'll do another video on preview, but just general initial thoughts right now is the Cats have that experience. The Lions have a bit more momentum in terms of riding the wave of that comeback, and then knowing they got the job done last year as well in the prelim, they know what it takes to win one and get to the grand final. So can they ride that and get there? So it'll be a big contest. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, and looking forward to that one. But this game just felt all about the Giants just letting it slip. I mean, just when you're watching it, you're like, surely this can't happen. And when I think it was Toby Green kicked the goal at the start of the fourth quarter, gets it to 31. You go, okay, well, they'll just hold this and see it out. Like, it may get closer, Brisbane may get a couple back, but the Giants will hold on to it. And then it just felt like they were just... They seemed to get frantic, and then they started trying to hold the ball too early. It felt like, and that's just not the way they play. It's not natural to them. It's not the way they play. They needed to just go with what they knew and what had worked for the start of it. Once it started getting close, they pretty much had to play it in a sense of, rather than not letting it slip, well, let's just pretend it's even and we've got to go on and get the win and take it. So they just seemed to do that. They went into their shell, and they're going to have to take a big look at themselves over the offseason, knowing they've let it slip twice to get their big chance to get to the final. And so their offseason will be interesting. There's lots of talk of players potentially wanting out. I think Perryman and Isaac Cummings. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those guys as well. But yeah, Giants just couldn't hold on. It was absolutely mental to see, but fair play to Brisbane on being able to get it done. And shout out to Ashcroft. I thought he was fantastic. I mean, Lachie Neale got basically tags out the game for the most part, and he just stood up in a big way. And for such a young player to be able to do that, it was really impressive. But move on to then what was actually the first game of the semi-finals played, Port versus Hawks. Port did it for Ken. They got it done. The Hawks just couldn't quite run it out. Their momentum, it had to end at some point. It would have been shocking to see them actually get all the way to the final and win the flag, but they put up a good fight. I thought they were going to do it in the end. I mean, they hit the post twice in the last 3 or 4 minutes. I think Sicily was the big one late. And so you think one of those goes through, they'll win the game. But Port held on, got the win, did it for Ken, which is big. Basically seemingly saved his job based on what Koshi's comments were, that he wasn't going to get rid of Ken. He'll be the coach next year, which feels like we're setting up for another year of talk of Ken potentially going. I feel like it was one of those Koshi should have just waited to the end of the season and made the decision then. Felt like the better way to go about it, but he said it now. If they get thumped by Sydney, which is definitely a possibility, we'll see if that stands. I say it's a possibility just on pure basis of there's every chance Port have played their grand final. They were so up and about for that game. Have they drained all that energy that they were after, that fight to win a final and get it done? Have they kind of just ran out of that steam? That's the big kind of takeaway from it. It's the big thought going into that prelim I'd say I have, is just was all their emotion expelled on that one game, or will they be able to rally back up for the Sydney game? Because they thumped Sydney not too long ago in one of the kind of final 5 or so rounds of the regular season. They were able to absolutely take Sydney to town by 100 points. So Sydney will be up for it. They'll have the momentum. Can Port fight that off? But the big talking point coming out of this game was Ken Hinkley's actions and comments after the game, talking to Jack Ginnivan and Sicily and going on about it. And it just, $20,000 is a steep fine for the action. I mean, it's one of those, Jack Ginnivan opened himself up for retaliation. So to me, it's all fair. Like, I think you open yourself up, you talk back. It wasn't for me, the few issues I did have with it is, well, firstly, 20,000 is a lot, especially when you consider Clarko got fined 20 grand for, I believe, some homophobic comments either early in the year or a couple of years ago, which was not enough and should have been a heftier punishment. But then you think McCartney, the coach at GWS, when he was bumped into Papley, got fined 20 grand for Ken's comments. They feel a bit more unnecessary to fine him, but kind of just, to me, it was dumb of Ken, but I don't think it was worth the AFL getting involved in. I don't think it was that necessary. It's not as if it was a big deal. It felt like something actually the AFL should try and lean into a bit more, put them round 1 of next year have them play again and go at it and build up to that, include it in the story. It's not as if anything, there's not as if there was anything offensive said. It was just basically trash talking back. But the issues from my view from Ken is, mate, your fans were calling for you to be fired a week ago. Maybe you should focus on just winning games before you start going at the opposition. You're not exactly in the strongest position to be talking, right? You were talking to Jack Ginniman, who won a flag last year. He's done something you couldn't. And so really, like, do you need to go and take a shot at the 20-year-old or 21-year-old at Hawthorn? I feel like that's something you leave it on the field. Like, you have Butters and Horn Francis and all your players when they're near Jack, giving him shit, trying to get under his skin a bit during the game. But once you've won, you won. Like, you don't need to do it all. And it gave the impression of your uncle, like the teacher school, whatever, trying to be out there to try and seem like one of the cool kids. It's just how it came across, and it just was so unnecessary. And for me, it was just like, really, like, you're not in the strongest standing. It's not like if Chris Scott did it, or Justin Longmire did it, or even Chris Fagan did it, who, like, those other coaches are established. They're not having their job called for every year. I mean, I know Chris Fagan, when they were struggling early, did, but took a team to a grand final last year. Like, I think Ken has much bigger issues than what Jack Ginniman's commenting on a Sydney photo a week ago. So I think it just wasn't necessary, but he did it, and it'll be interesting to see how they go this weekend. I think it just, it felt like it was done because it overshadowed the good performance of Port. And bear in mind, that's tough for me to say. I'm a diehard Crows fan. I hate the fact they won. I was rooting so much for them to lose, and I would be rooting for Sydney to win. But they performed great. They got over the line. But just why would you go and ruin it? But he did. It's a shame for him, but now they just need to look and see how they can bounce back against Sydney, because that's going to be an extremely tough game. And I think it's going to be down to the start of that game. I think if they let Sydney have a big start, then they're going to be in trouble. But as I said, we'll make another video about that and go through it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments on any of the things we spoke about, really, the Miracle and Grass game, how that went, what your thoughts on the Giants going out straight sets were. What did you think of Ken Hinkley's actions and the fine associated? Was it too much, not enough? Was it necessary? What was your take on it? And let me know who you're going for in the prelims and the grand final coming forward. And other than that, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. And let me know in the comments if there's any other topics you want me to discuss going forward as well. But I appreciate listening, as I said, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.